this episode, we'll focus on Shinpaku juniper culture. We'll take an in-depth look at some of the techniques that we've presented in past episodes, as well as several new techniques that we haven't presented yet. We'll also take a look at some problem junipers and discuss why those problems occurred and how we can fix them. In Japan, what we find is that there are several nurseries that specialize in certain aspects of bonsai art. So for example, many nurseries will do field-grown material exclusively, which is what I have right here. They'll basically take whips or cuttings and wrap wire around them, put twists in the trunk, then plant them in the ground, and over a period of several years or decades, develop the tree. And then from there, it'll be dug up, passed along to a nursery where they do grafting on the plant. For example, this one here was more than likely not an Itoigawa to start with, but was probably a typical Kishu, so that the trunk would thicken faster. Then Itoigawa juniper foliage, which is finer, was grafted onto the tree at the second stage in the process. And following that, the tree will go to another nursery that styles the plant, the initial type styling, and then from there, as the tree develops over several years or decades, it'll move on to nurseries like Kokaen. One thing that we specialize in here at Kokaen Nursery in Osaka is refining material that has already been developed over time. So we'll take material like this Shinpaku here, which has been developed, wired, styled, and restyled over several decades, and what we'll do is refine that even further, prepare it either for a customer to put into a show or prepare it for sale. Now the way that we do that is by detail wiring the tree, and with Shinpakus we really can do it any time of the year because we're not doing heavy bending on the plant, we're just lightly restyling the tree. So what we'll do is explain sort of how we do that with this type of Shinpaku. The first step in preparing these type of Shinpaku junipers for a customer or for display is to clean up the live vein on the tree and then to clean up the dead wood. Now the reason we clean up the live wood is because over time it'll fissure up and turn sort of a grayish type color, and it doesn't really contrast very well with the dead wood. So in order to correct that, what we'll do is take some fine-grained sandpaper, a knife, maybe a razor blade or a specialty knife like this here, and we'll go through and peel off the outer layer of bark while at the same time rubbing it down with the sandpaper. Now this will turn it a very bright red color, and when we paint the dead wood with lime sulfur, you'll get a nice contrast between the red and the white. So as we've discussed in previous episodes, the next step after cleaning the live wood is to clean up the dead wood. Now the way that we do that is by taking a toothbrush and water, scrubbing down the dead wood, letting it dry for 2 to 4 hours, and then painting it over with a mixture of lime sulfur and water in a ratio of 1:1. When we're working with Shinpaku junipers, we want to thin them out before we actually start wiring the tree. So we want to make sure that we get rid of all the small branches that are protruding from the crotches of the larger branches, because these just zap energy from the end of the branches. So we remove all of those, but at the same time we want to leave the smaller branches that are protruding a little further out on either the sides or the top of the main branches. These will be used later to cut back to and reduce the overall size of the tree. That way we can maintain the size of the tree over a long period of time. We also want to make sure to remove any thick branches that are protruding straight up or straight down out of our main branches or secondary branches, because these will continue to grow stronger and stronger and stronger, and the other branches will weaken, and eventually we won't have a nice balanced design.
今、心拍の透かしの作業をしています。下の方がだいたい弱くなって少し葉っぱが少ないので、混んでいる上の方を下の葉っぱの少ない部分とだいたい同じようなボリュームになるように、葉の量をバランスよくして、そしてもう一度ふんわりとしたイメージに、作っていきます。
This is the tree at the end of the refinement process. And what we've done is taken all of the fine branches, wired them all the way out to the tips, laid the smaller branches that are a little closer to the trunk on top of the longer branches, and that gives it a nice full round effect. We've made sure that all the branches on the bottom are completely flat and completely cleaned up. This gives it a very refined, finished look. Now, a lot of people mention that this doesn't look very natural, but really the goal is over time to take that wire off. So by making sure that all the branches are perfectly in position now, when we take that wire off in the future, they'll lightly float up and it'll give it a natural but refined look. This juniper is known as Hakodyu, or the White Dragon. It was a name given to this tree by the Japanese Bonsai Association about 40 years ago. Now, this particular type of tree is a very rare find even in Japan. It's a natural Itoigawa juniper, so nothing has been grafted on this tree. And what's also incredible about this plant is how many eda jin the tree has, which means branch jins, or dead wood that's running down the branches. So this is a very rare find and a very interesting tree. More than likely it's about 350 years old.
This is a Kicho bonsai, or an important cultural masterpiece tree here in Japan. It's an Itoigawa Shinpaku, and it's very, very nice. All the dead wood is natural, and it doesn't have a fat trunk, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. Not all trees need to have a massive base. This tree is elegant and refined, and as Robert Stephen points out in his book, this is a post-mature state tree. So it's past the point of being a mature tree. It's gone through some hardship and it's recovered, and now it's flourishing again.
Many of the trees that we work with here at Cây Nursery in Osaka are actually grafted material. For example, this tree here was originally a Tohoku Shinpaku, which has very coarse foliage, but which also develops rather quickly, and you get this nice twisted thick deadwood on. However, when we turned it into a bonsai, that foliage becomes a problem. So we had this tree regrafted with Itoigawa juniper, which is this very nice light foliage here, and that makes the tree much more sustainable over a long period of time. This is another example of a grafted Shinpaku juniper. The foliage is Itoigawa, but the base trunk on this tree was originally a sonare, or a percumbens juniper, that was collected in the mountains of Japan. This tree was grafted about 25 years ago, and at this point it's almost impossible to tell where the grafts actually took hold.
This tree was also a sonare originally and had Itoigawa foliage grafted onto it. This tree was selected for grafting because of the great deadwood and the movement in the trunk and the interplay between that and the deadwood. So now, as the tree fills out, it's slowly but surely getting to the point where it'll be eligible for the kokofu tin. It's been on the taikon tin many times, but the refinement level of this tree is just getting to the point where it's of kokofu quality.
今回の仕事では荒木に対する作業というのはあまりありませんが、たまにこういった荒木の作業もあります。これは心拍の、糸魚川に継ぎ替えたものですごくいい葉性が継がれています。まずは継いだ葉に元気をつけるために一旦すごく伸ばされていたんですけども、それを切り詰めて、なおかつ針金もかかっているんですけども、細かくかけるのではなく、将来どの方向にどの枝を持っていって木を作っていくかというのをイメージしながら、およそ枝芯を、正しい位置に振ってあります。そしてこれからはこの葉があとそうですね、2年3年と待って、混んできた時にもう一度静止をし直して仕上げていくようなことになります。